Wow, what a difference a week makes. Just last week, we were dealing with an extremely cold Arctic air mass parked across the middle part of the country. In fact, even South Dakota had 25 below zero. And yesterday, we had a first confirmed tornado in the month of February. And further south, back down into Nebraska, they clocked in at 33 below zero on the 20th. And then yesterday, they soared all the way to 69 degrees. That is 102-degree swing over a 5-day span. Just a crazy setup and it flipped all the way completely around as the warmer anomalies have really kind of locked in for your work week. And it's also locked in some much drier air. So it's going to be a nice week across a good part of the country. But as we head into late Friday, going into the weekend, all eyes will be trending further north because we do still have some Arctic air around, and that will likely start to sink further southbound by then as the jet stream starts to buckle and pulling some colder anomalies back into the Dakotas, into areas of the Great Lakes, and really start to impact parts of the Ohio Valley, getting back into the mid-Atlantic as well as into the Northeast, especially as we head into this weekend. So by Saturday heading into Sunday, we've got some very cold air in Arctic air coming back in the picture. It will be a quick burst of colder air, but you're definitely going to be feeling it in a big way if you live up here in the north central US, down through the Tennessee Valley, all the way across into the DC region, but especially as you head up into the Northeast and getting back into New England and going back into the Quebec region, while much of the West is well above average. But underneath that, we're going to be dealing with some snow with that little system that's coming in from that northwest flow. So do expect some snow as we head into the weekend, parts of the upper Great Lakes, especially there into upstate New York. This area has just been clocked, not just with the lake effect, but man, Buffalo, I was reading, it's only been maybe a day or two. They have not actually seen any snow for the entire every single day of 2025. So it's been like 50 something days. I've already seen at least some snow like every single day. So this area has just been clocked with heavy snow on relentlessly, and going back into Vermont and New Hampshire and as well as into Maine. But then you can see all eyes will be trending west with those warmer anomalies. We are going to be looking at another area of low pressure that will likely start to develop as we head into the weekend, and that will likely set the stage at the beginning stages of what could be a very active week heading into next week. So we'll be watching two areas of disturbed weather going into the weekend, one across the southwest regions, and even another one that's going to be trailing behind this one. And this one actually could be ended up being the stronger of the two after it's all said and done, as this kind of moves across from west to east. And as it does, it will likely bring some heavier snows back in the picture for areas into Colorado. So yeah, back into Denver, do expect some heavier snowfall to start flying. That goes into March. That is your snowiest month of the season, and it's definitely going to come to fruition starting off the month with some heavier snows as we head into the second time frame of March. But there's the rain coming back in the picture for the Pacific Northwest along the areas of Washington and Oregon and California that gets into areas of Nevada. That's going to be a system, as you see much of the Northeast starts to dry out as that system moves offshore. So they should get going to a little bit calmer period after they get that colder shot of air. But we will be looking at the jet stream because it's a little bit concerning setup as we head into next week, because we've got two little systems that we're talking about. We've got a little short wave that will be impacting with the heavier snows across areas of the Rockies. But out ahead of it, we are going to be looking at some heavier thunderstorms likely starting to come to fruition on Sunday, going into Monday. That will likely set up a fairly decent, significant severe weather setup as we head into Monday and Tuesday timeframe, as this trailing trough, pretty significant, starts to dig across the southwest regions. And as it digs, it's going to tap into some of that untapped Gulf waters and very warm conditions, and the dew points are definitely going to be elevated. So it's kind of a fairly decent setup for your early spring setup, as that right front quadrant should be fully loaded by then with those elevated dew points and higher cape values to be able to work with. So if we look at some of the dew points, I mean, typically your sweet spot is right around 55 on the dew point to get at least some sort of severe weather, and you can definitely see we're well above that. So it's kind of a dry line setup that comes in off the west, and then going into the evening time frame, likely into the overnight on Monday night going into Tuesday, we'll be actually having to fine tune this pretty closely, because right now this definitely looks to be a severe weather setup, especially with dew points going well into the 60s, if not some upper 60s. And you can see that 55 mark goes all the way into Oklahoma, into Kansas, back into Missouri, and even goes into Arkansas, and that will likely swing into Louisiana as well. And yes, that could be setting up the stage as a surface low likely develops across the plains. Out ahead of it will provide that lift, and we could be looking at numerous showers and thunderstorms, with some of these turning severe and more surface based. So this could be all three modes of severe storms by then, as the snow will start to fly across the Rockies, and that will likely eject into northeast, bringing those snows back into areas of Nebraska as well as into South Dakota, and eventually head up into areas of Minnesota. At the same time, further south, they'll be dealing with that severe storms with the Cape value. Your convective available potential energy is definitely going to be elevated by then. So a lot of parameters are starting to come together as a fairly severe weather setup. And even the SIPS guidance, even this is newly updated. Of course, this is a long ways out. This is Monday night into Tuesday, but right now they've already went ahead and highlighted an area of concern, as all the ingredients are likely starting to come together across portions of North Texas into Oklahoma as well as into Arkansas. And yes, this will obviously easily get expanded and be more fine-tuned. And I do expect, once the a little bit more the global congruency starts to come together in the next day or two, the SPC will likely put out a slight risk for severe storms for that area. But what happens going into next week, going into that month of March, is the atmosphere is going to completely flip again, as you definitely see much of the east starts to warm up in a big way. And then what the troughs coming in out west, there's going to be put the colder anomalies back in and out west, and that typically brings this type of setup brings severe storms, and that's what is likely going to come to fruition. And this will likely be probably a multi-day event, starting coming in with these short waves on Sunday, heading into Monday night and Tuesday would likely be severe, going into Wednesday would likely be severe. But this is Monday night going into Tuesday night with that line of showers and thunderstorms going back into Texas as well as into Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas, into Missouri, up through the Ohio Valley. And then there's the snow for those areas into Colorado, back into Wyoming, through the Dakotas as well as into Nebraska. And that will likely swing up into portions of Iowa and Minnesota, while further south, they're dealing with all the severe storms going back into the Dixie Valley region. This would likely be in the Tuesday afternoon time frame, as it clears out of Oklahoma and Texas, would likely be into Louisiana. This would be next Tuesday, folks. Next Tuesday, March the 4th time frame. But this could be a multi-day event that we'll have to fine tune on this channel and keep you well ahead of the storm, because it does appear to be an early severe weather setup going into the month of March. And there's the heavier rain that will unload on the southern side of this system that will extend all the way up into Indiana as well as into Ohio. And there's the colder side with that trough coming in out west and the colder anomalies coming in out west. That will be in the form of frozen precipitation and the form of snow heading up into Nebraska. And like I mentioned, extending into Minnesota. And as it comes back on the back side of it, you could be ended up with some snow into northern Illinois by then, and back into Wisconsin as well as into areas of Canada. And then there's the heavier rains pushing probably into the southeast, going across the eastern seaboard into the Carolinas and back into the mid-Atlantic by then. And look what happens. more snow for Colorado. So you actually have several systems that'll come on board in that first week of March. And then as we head into that Wednesday, Thursday, with that significant severe weather pushing out, on the backside, we'll actually have a fairly decent cold front for March standards. This will be a quick shot of colder air, but you're definitely going to be feeling it after the big warm up that's going to be unloading over the next 4 or 5 days. We'll have that quick shot of colder air that should likely clear the air mass out, at least for a day or two, but it's not going to last long, because it definitely appears to be an active time frame ahead once we flip the calendar in the month of March, because we'll be looking at yet another system that's going to be coming in off the west coast. Will likely stay on the colder side, and yet we have another upper level low that will likely get its act together across California back into Nevada again, and this will likely be ejecting into the Rockies further south, some beneficial rains for areas into Arizona. But yes, that would likely bring more heavy snow for you guys into the mountain ranges of Colorado, back into the Rockies, getting into western areas of Kansas, as well as into Nebraska. So we'll be looking at a more active time frame, especially as we flip the calendar in the month of March, with some colder anomalies coming back and severe storms. And that could be a multi-day setup. So we'll be fine-tuning that. This will be the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of the month of March. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch the next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.